Thank you. Last summer, I returned to Afghanistan for the first time since we fled the country. It was going to be a short trip, but nevertheless, I was finally going home. Landing at Kabul airport on a rather heated ground, I was met by a wave of emotions. One struck me the hardest, and it was the feeling of unfamiliarity. 17 years ago, my family had to flee my birth country due to the ongoing battling in Afghanistan. First to Pakistan, and then eventually to Norway as political refugees. So as we moved from Afghanistan, the movement itself occurred in relation to home. We are leaving our home, my parents would say. And this confused my young self. I remember thinking, if we are leaving our home, then nothing can replace this home. I started romanticizing my home country. Growing up in Norway, I painted a picture of Afghanistan that I thought I knew and hoped I knew. Not having enough memories of the place or the people I had met there, I relied on my mother's stories. My mother's college days at Kabul University, where she later became a lecturer, turned into vivid images in my mind. On Fridays, I would go to Kabul cinema, she would recall, and have shiryakh, the handmade Afghan ice cream. It was as if I was there those Fridays, and not in Norway. I still remember my 9-year-old self landing at Nordreisa airport, north of Norway. It was freezing. It was September, but then again, this is Norway. Very, very long, dark days and short daylight. Did not feel very home to begin with. And more often than not, I was reminded that I am not from here. These remindings were not rude, they were curious. Where is your home country? How is your home country? And do you feel home here? At the time, I understood these questions as I had to defend where I came from. I had to defend my home. But first, I had to find it again. So last summer, returning to Afghanistan with this question in mind, I collected as many stories as I could. And I talked with some remarkable individuals, and I soon realized I did not know my home. I did not know Afghanistan. Afghanistan was painted with a brush of imaginary colors. This was not the home my mother was telling me stories from. This was not the home I had told my friends in Norway about. I realized I was one of those individuals living in the gap between the natural home and the thrive for the idealized, particular home. A place I could feel complete and fulfilled. So returning from Afghanistan, I moved to a third country, Maastricht, Netherlands. And here I enrolled in one of the most international masters Europe could offer. And also here I realized people were asking the same questions. Many of the staff and the students at Maastricht University, they were also in search of home. They were from afar, lived in suitcases, and were between places. Perhaps this is the undercurrent of globalization, bringing people closer and further away from home, or opposite, creating multiple homes and making the world seem much, much bigger because we can't possibly live in each and one of these homes at the same time. So some of us, we create a symbolic home. A home that we can carry with us wherever we go. For some, this symbolic home can even be a bag of rice. Let me elaborate on that. During my early years, I volunteered as a refugee interpreter. I often visited families arriving from Afghanistan to Norway. These families had very basic needs. They needed to get groceries, learn the alphabet, and fill out application forms. But some of these individuals had needs that were beyond anyone's reach. I remember one older woman that cried the moment we first met. In between the tears, she shared her story. She was carrying 2 bags of Afghan rice on her shoulders, crossing the Mediterranean Sea with her family. The human trafficker made her throw away the bags. It was making the boat heavy. And as he did this, he deprived her of a piece of her home, a piece of the familiar and the known. It was as if he deprived me of her humanity. A piece of her home now at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, amongst other valuables that people had to leave behind in the seek of a safer and better home. These families, like my own, had to flee 32 years of brutal battling in Afghanistan, making Afghanistan one of the largest refugee-producing countries up until 2014, to be replaced by Syria the last 2 years. These stories were heart-wrenching. But I also met individuals that did not have a home that was familiar and known. In the Netherlands, one of my fellow students, he's Dutch, born and raised in the Netherlands. He spent a year in South Korea, returning to feel more home in South Korea than he did in the Netherlands. And when I asked him, what about South Korea made you feel home? He described the country the same way I had described Afghanistan to my friends in Norway. The thrive for the ideal home, a place he felt complete and fulfilled, where self-definition was determined by people around him. Another friend, she said, I have my roots, but they're not planted on the ground. My roots are wrapped around me like a sari. So wherever I go, my home goes with me. These friends reminded me of a moment I had last summer in Afghanistan. I was sitting on one of the Kabul rooftops, and I was reading poetry with Afghan friends. Just hours earlier, there was an attack at the Afghan parliament. Few blocks from where I was now sitting and reading poetry facing the moon. At the time, I did not know that this too was a feeling of home, not associated with the place, but to the moment. I returned to Afghanistan for a second trip. And this trip was not only longer, but it was also different. I connected with the youth entering a new era. These youth are no different than youth anywhere else I've met. They cherished commonalities. They valued understanding, and they felt safe in each other's company. We often talked about notions of home. This was often interlinked with staying, leaving, and journeying. As these are the questions most people are faced with today. More and more people are leaving their notions of home. Some of us arrive to a new home but some never find a home. I found my home, and I keep finding new homes. Because home to me are people that took the time to share their story. Home to me are those individuals that integrated me. Home is the people that ask the right questions. And we can all be home wherever we are, as long as we see and are seen. Look around you. Home is the feeling you give to the person next to you. Home is in the mind. And think about this next time you see someone that have left their notion of home. Think about this next time you see someone sitting on a foreign step, romanticizing of their home like I did. Home is a matter of perspective. Thank you very much.